tell me about some of your favorite items that may have, took you on a scavenger hunt, or, can you tell us about some of the stories behind them and how you actually found them?
I bet you there are dozens of people that are in this movie and have some kind of story. The first time the movie came out, she saw herself and she was so excited that her and Tom stayed and watched the second showing, and they were trying to kick him out of the theater, and she goes, "No, you don't understand. I'm in this movie.
Welcome to another Major Award edition of Talking a Christmas Story with the Cast. I'm your host, Yano Anaya, that pint-sized terror, otherwise known as Grover Dill. Today we have a very special guest whose dedication to A Christmas Story would make even Ralphie blush. John Demmer is joining us, a super collector whose treasure trove of memorabilia is nothing short of legendary. So sit back, relax, and prepare to be transported to a world where leg lamps glow and Red Ryder dreams come true. Whether you've watched the movie once or countless times, one thing that captivates us all is the same thing that captivates Ralphie for the entirety of the story. Children and adults alike watch the film with wide-eyed anticipation as Ralphie navigates the trials and tribulations of his quest for the ultimate Christmas gift, the Red Ryder Carbine Action 200-shot range model air rifle. Even if you have never wanted or owned a BB gun, when you watch the movie, you find yourself cheering Ralphie on every step of his journey. It is more than just the BB gun itself that we identify with and yearn for. It's the quest itself. It is the feeling of awe as you and your closest friends press your face up to the glass of a department store, with the object of your desire so near yet entirely out of reach. It is the persistence of striving for what you want, no matter how many times you get told you'll shoot your eye out. It's the joy and catharsis of, spoiler alert, seeing one last present on Christmas morning and knowing exactly what's inside. This journey is something we all go through when we choose a goal or a dream and refuse to give up on it, no matter how unlikely it may feel at the outset. Today's episode is all about the thrill of striving, collecting, and sharing what it means to be a Christmas Story fan. I can picture our guest today as one of those kids staring in awe through the windows of Higbee's department store. His name is John Demmer, and he has an unparalleled collection of unique memorabilia that we're going to be talking about today. But his love for the movie has gone way far beyond his collection. He is currently in the process of meeting as many of the people who worked on the movie as possible, whether they be cast members, background performers, or crew members. And he has just returned from a trip where he visited the Canadian shooting locations. He collects not just the physical items, but the stories surrounding this film, and he's here to share them with us today. That being said, if you've just been listening to our show on our favorite podcast app, I would recommend checking it out on YouTube as well, because we'll be looking at some elements from his collection. If you're not able to watch it right now, don't worry. We'll describe what we're talking about as well. With no further ado, John Demmer. John Demmer, welcome to the Talking a Christmas Story with the Cast podcast. This is an amazing experience to have you with us because I personally have seen you in our Christmas Story family group post a lot of really, really good information. So the first question that I have for you is, what is it about the movie that resonated with you? So let's kind of go way back to where it all started. When did you watch A Christmas Story for the very first time in your life?
I know exactly when I watched it because my wife won't let me forget. My wife of 38 years, and I were on a date, and my dad drove us both to see A Christmas Story, and he was 15 minutes late, and we missed the beginning, and she was so upset about that. And she just reminds me to this day so we had to stay and wait for it to finish and then turn back on again. So we saw it together. The girl that was my girlfriend and became my future wife, the opening year in the theater right here locally in town.
Wow, man, that's an amazing story. I don't think I've ever in the history of me being there for fans have heard that unique story. So 38 years of marriage, and in the initial parts of your relationship, your dad took you to go see the movie. That's so cool. So you guys have a bond when it comes to A Christmas Story. That's why you guys click. That's why you guys have so much fun with this movie. Even when I saw you right at the event in Cleveland, you guys were dressed up. You were playing a part. It was you guys
That's right.
were just having so much fun. That's awesome. So tell me about you know the first thing that initially caught your attention about A Christmas Story. Did you know that your dad was taking you to see this, or what became and why did it become such a passion for you?
Okay, so we saw the movie at that time, and at that time it was just a movie. It wasn't the point where I fell in love with it. The point that I fell in love with it was, just like a lot of people, is when they started to replay it on TBS for the 24-hour marathon. And I, like you said, I've written a lot of stuff for the ACF family site, ACS family site, and sometimes I'm told I write too much, but I did write a long thing once explaining the three views that I had. One is you could look at it as a reminiscent film, looking back at the 40s and watching this little kid want to get the gun. The second is where you're watching it as an adult, sort of recalling your own childhood. And then the third aspect is watching as an adult, wondering how your children are going to remember you. So I think a lot of this is my opinion, but I think a lot of the fans on the site and of the movie are not children. I think they're adults. I think they're adults either looking back on the magic of Christmas for them when they were young, or just trying to recapture some of their youth, or looking forward to what, every family has a story. Every family has an old man, has a Chinese turkey story. And I think that's what this movie does. It draws on a lot of family issues that are relevant to all of us within this one movie.
Yeah, that's very eloquently said, because, and I will tell you that you are right 100%. There's, in practically every single scene, there is a part of my life, a part of a majority of people's life that people can resonate with, because that's how we were raised. That's how we experience life. And so it makes sense, because now we have all of these new movies that are coming out, and it's all just very different than what, life for us as, the Gen Xers really experienced. You know what I mean? So, I'm going to support you, and I'm going to tell you, don't ever feel bad for writing a mini story on our website, bro. Like, your posts are epic, and don't ever think that they're not. And if anybody tells you your stories are too long, let me know, because I'm the bully. I could get away with shutting that down, and I will do that for you, because the thing is that you fact checked. The thing is that even when somebody else says, oh, no, that's not necessarily true, like, you come back with facts, or you say, yeah, you know what, you're right, I was wrong. That's amazing. Thank you for adding that to my information, because,
yes,
that transparency and that honesty is something that is very attractive about why you write and how you write. So, I think it's awesome, and I appreciate you doing those posts, because it's needed. And I think that, we in the future are probably going to be doing some things with each other, because you have accumulated a lot of really good, relevant information. And I think that because this movie has become so relevant, we need to do something with that. All of that, all that time and effort and money and love that you poured into it, I think that we definitely need to do something about that. So that kind of ties me into the next question. So tell me about your role as the town historian. Right, that's what I hear. That in the town where you live, you're the town historian. And how has that influenced, your journey as a fan and a collector?
So in high school, I pretty much failed history because it was taught to me as all dates and numbers and this or that. So I'm town historian for a town that I'm not even born in. I wasn't even raised here. But I came to the town, and just like with the Christmas Story stuff, there was something that infatuated me about the town. I started researching it, started collecting memorabilia, put enough stuff together that a little book company that does all those little sepia-covered books says, hey, would you like to do a book on the town? And I said, okay, I'll do it. Then the book was so well received that the town fathers came and said, listen, we haven't had a town historian for 30 years. Would you like to do it? And now I've been doing that for about 28 years. It's the research to me, it all ties in together. The town historian stuff, this Christmas story stuff, it's fun. It's fun to be able to prove something, disprove something, find new information. And I've enjoyed it a lot. I mean, this whole thing started as, we watching the movie. My wife and I also have this passion for antiques. And when we're watching the movie, we're like, whoa, look at that. That's a cool radio there. Why don't we see if we could find that? And then we started to do stuff like that. We started to find the things that were on screen in the movie. Many of these things that are behind me right now are things that are in the movie somewhere. And these are period pieces. These are, which is difficult in itself, because remember, when the movie was made, they're roughly calculating it at around 1939, 1940, which was already 40 years. And now here we are 40 years later, and I'm trying to find these same things. So a lot of these toys and things are 85 to 90 years old, and that becomes a passion. My wife and I love to travel, and we use some of these things as an excuse to travel. Let's go get this toy over here. Let's go do that. So that turned into meeting the cast. And the first time I met most of you guys was in a little tiny show in New Jersey. It was a couple weeks before the big 40th anniversary Cleveland show. All 6 of you got together in one spot in New Jersey. And I came down. That was the first time I met you guys all in person. And I thought, this is great. And then Cleveland, we really geared up. We said, we got to go out there. We got to see what this is all about. You're going to have, the plan was to have 12 people from the movie there. And I said, I would like to meet them all. And Cleveland was a great thing. And I decided, I had that dumb Cowboy Ralphie costume from something, a little while back. I had made it, and I swore I would never put it on again. It was when Zach came to a drive-in movie theater, and I had built a set that looked like the Parker family thing for his photo op. And I was thinking, should I wear that thing? Will people find it funny, or will I be just outcast? And I'll tell you, people at that convention were just, everyone was so friendly, so positive. People want to take pictures with us because we were dressed up, and Cindy wasn't, Cindy was just going to wear a t-shirt, a Christmas Story t-shirt, and she saw me all dressed up. She goes, you know what? I'm going to be Black Bart to be with you. And so, which was a huge relief, because it's really odd walking down the streets of Cleveland from your hotel as a 10-year-old white cowboy. I got some looks that day.
I'm sure you did, man. I'm sure you did. But I will tell you that when I saw you dressed like that, and I'm sure that my experience may resonate with so many other fans' experiences too, is that it brought me back to that time as a kid when we were living in that wonderland, that dreamland of cops and robbers, right? Because that's exactly what you guys represented, was cops and robbers, and or cowboys and Indians. You remember those costumes? I remember taking my guns to the grocery store. You know what I mean? My little cowboy hat and all that stuff, little cap guns that we used to get when we were kids. And so I think that just strips this rat race that we all live in on a daily basis, and it strips all that away, and it lets us be, present of being that child again. And that's the beauty behind what Christmas Story actually does. At least for me, it does, is it kind of just strips away, life for a little while, and allows us to resonate with that child that still is within. So, I love the fact that you did that. And I know that, to getting dressed and actually doing that was nerve-wracking and probably embarrassing, but that little spark, that little inner burning desire for you to want to do that, and hopefully fans will receive it well, was bravo. Like literally Oscars winning right there is what that was, man. So
well, it was received well enough that we actually jumped on a bus and went over to the Christmas Story house and did a few shots over there. So I guess I must have gotten comfortable with it at some point.
That's great stuff.
But the thing about the family, that you've created here has been a tremendous positive influence on my life. Some of the people that I've met in the collecting and in this thing that we'll talk about soon with all the extras that I'm meeting, it's been it's been life changing. I have people, one of the biggest questions I have is, why do you spend so much time on this? And it's because it's so enjoyable. I haven't really had a bad experience yet. And, there's stories that I've written about that are too long to talk about now, but just like getting the radio was during COVID, and it had to come over from Canada and the borders were closed. And what this guy, Kurt Snyder, had to do, to get this radio to me, on a border crossing, where I actually had one company say to me, no one could want this radio that much. We're a little nervous. You're sure there's no drugs in here? We don't want to transport this radio over. And I was like, it's from a movie that I love.
Wow.
And there's all these great people who come out of the woodwork to go and do something for you. I've had stuff sent to me. My friend Chris Dearman sent me a hubcap from a 1940 Olds, and I said, what do I owe you, buddy? He just sent it. He goes, no. He says, I see your passion for it, and I want you to have it. And that's the same thing with this. This is incredibly rare. The Zeppelin is one of 10 known. And this came about because somebody, believe it or not, had two of them. And I was asking around on the internet if anyone had one, and this guy contacted me privately, said, would you like it? And I was like, oh boy, how much is, what's this going to be? And the price was unbelievably low. And at one point, and it took about a year for him to finally send it to me, and I didn't bother him. I never pressure anybody. And at the end of it all, I said, why did you do it? And he said, I see all your writing. I see your passion for it. And he goes, you're the guy who should have it. And it was in really bad shape, and I had to actually make a bunch of parts for it, and it took me almost a year to get it finished. And when it was done, to even make it more special, here's another special story. I brought it to that New Jersey show where I first met you guys and met Ian for the first time. And I said, listen, do you know what this, you obviously know what this is, right? And he goes, yes. He goes, I have the one from the movie. And he goes, I have never, ever seen another one. And he took it and he kind of played with it, and we were talking, and it was so casual and cordial. And I'm thinking, I've got to have him sign it. He's got to be the only guy to sign it. And I said, and I need to have a picture of him holding it. So I'm kind of peeking down because I had, spent a lot of money that day getting everybody's autographs, and I was peeking down saying, okay, this. So he goes and he ends up signing it and puts the quote on it, Whoopi is Zeppelin, and then he takes pictures, and I say, what do I owe you, buddy? And he goes, you know what? He goes, nothing. He goes, this has been an incredible experience, and you're so excited about it, and all the work you put into it. He goes, just go. And it's those kind of things, it's those kind of people that I enjoy on this site, because you're right, the world is big and bad and dirty and ugly out there. And this movie is crisp and clean. It's the beauty of the movie is, you don't know the parents' names, because when you were 10 years old, you didn't call your parents by their names. There's no talk of coming out of the Great Depression. There's no talk about going into World War II, because it's all from a 10-year-old's perspective. And this is the closest that us as adults are ever going to get back to that. We're never going to get back to those days of not knowing what a mortgage is or what bills are or what bad things are out there. And I think this movie is the closest thing you have to regaining that innocence and that childhood fun. And I've just had a blast with it.
That's awesome, man. And I want to thank you for bringing that up with that experience with Ian, because I got to tell you that all of us have that same kind of quality, have that same kind of love and loyalty to the movie and to the fans. Because in that moment, imagine how shitty it would have been to say, oh yeah, just, $50. No, Ian gets it 100%. Scotty Schwartz gets it. Zach Ward gets it. Peter Billingsley gets it. You know what I mean? It's like we all know, even Art D. Rob totally gets it. When there's something that is not, outside of a picture, even sometimes we'll sign free autographs just because we have that really good quality to understand and experience the dynamic of that individual's experience of the movie. And so, I'm so happy and relieved to know that, and, I'm not surprised, to be honest with you, that Ian did that. I'm not surprised at all, because I've seen him do it hundreds of times, for a lot of different fans. And knowing that you spent the time, the energy, the money to get there and actually come in costume and bring a replica with only one of 10. And so, it just made all the experience better to know that Ian did that. And I'm going to give Ian the props for doing that, because I love him like my brother. I love all of them like my brother, my brothers, because we do all have that connection from this movie. So thank you for sharing that, because that helps us get this into the fabric of all the fans to kind of understand that we know how important this is. We know how it resonates with all of our fans in their life, in their families, in their communities, in everything that they do around the movie, because it's not just a movie anymore. It's literally a legendary tale of our childhood. So, knowing that you have a Zeppelin, man, I'm sure you've done a lot of collecting, right? So let's kind of talk about your collection itself. So do you have a specific theme, or have you just been collecting as you can go?
What it is you start with the big items, and then you kind of whittle through those really fast. So what some of the collectors like myself, and there's a few major collectors, we're down to the point where we're so ridiculous when I say it out loud, but we are freeze framing still shot images, blowing them up, computer enhancing them to find certain things, because there are certain things that are here in this room and in my other part of the collection that are shown in the movie for
Seconds.
a quarter of a second, and only one part of it. So to find the exact item, to research it to that degree, and then to now go out in the real world and try to find it, it's a hunt, and it's fun, and it gives you sort of these little goals. But it is getting harder and harder, because we're starting to collect the majority. I have pretty much the majority of toys that are in Higbee's windows. I have.
Wow, that's amazing.
And then a lot of the stuff that you see in the house, in the background, underneath the sink when Randy's crying, there's all soap boxes and things. I have a lot of that stuff. So it's getting harder and harder, but there's still a lot of things out there that haven't been found. There are things that are maybe even one of a kind, because none of the major collectors have them. So it's interesting, because it gives you a goal. It gives you something. So now you're watching the movie and you might catch a little glimpse of something and say, oh, what's that? Because here's another odd thing about me, and I don't know if how people respond differently to this. I will only watch the movie one time a year, and that is for the 24-hour marathon. I will watch it as many times as I can. Mm-hmm. And then, other than clicking the DVD on for research, for looking for stuff, I do not watch the movie. And the specific reason for that is, when I was growing up as a kid, if you wanted to watch a Charlie Brown Christmas, you better have your butt in the seat at Channel 2, 8 o'clock on December whatever. Otherwise, you missed it. So it made it special. So there are very few things like that anymore with the internet and with the availability of everything all the time, all at once. So I make this movie extra special I make sure to watch the opening scene on the first showing of the 24-hour marathon, and I make sure to watch the closing scene. And on the opening, I am ecstatic. And believe me, on the closing music of the last showing, I actually get really sad, because I know it'll be a full year. But I do that on purpose, because it makes it extra special. Now, I know there are fans out there that will watch it all the time, or when they're feeling sad, and to each his own. But for me, I will watch it one time a year just for the marathon.
Well, again, it's not weird. Again, I think it's your specific tradition that you've created. And, I have to give you all the respect in the world for doing that, because that's what life was like when we were kids. 100%. I mean, even when the movie came out 24 hours a day, okay, we probably had beta, right? There was beta before, a VHS came out. And I don't even know if it came out on beta, but I do know it came out to the point where the only reason why they showed it 24 hours a day is because they wanted more people to see it, because it was competing with the other two Christmas movies that are classics as well. And so A Christmas Story has been the only Christmas movie that has increased in its ratings year after year after year after year. But when we look back as kids, it's like you're right. If you weren't sitting on your butt at 8 o'clock in the morning to watch your specific cartoons or whatever, after school special you wanted to see, you weren't going to see it. There was no rewinding. There was no going back and say, "Oh my God, I missed episode 16." You can't go back and watch it. It's done, right? So I think that your tradition about that, it does make it so much more special, because when you do come back to it, it just your memories, they start to flood instead of seeing it more often throughout the year. So that's amazing. I love that. I love that a lot. So your collection. I can only imagine you have an incredible collection. So tell me about some of your favorite items that may have, took you on a scavenger hunt, or, can you tell us about some of the stories behind them and how you actually found them?
Of course, when you say there's two favorites, the Zeppelin and the radio are two of my favorites, and not because of their rarity or that they're difficult to find. I love the stories, and I encourage the fans of the site to go back and find those stories of what it took to get that radio over, and the bond, the friendship that Kurt and I, which, by the way, Kurt Snyder, the one who got me the radio, his mother was a teacher at the school, in Victoria School in Canada, and that some of that handwriting on the blackboard in Ralphie's classroom is her handwriting. When he told me that blew me away. And when we get into all the extras, that's why I started interviewing the extras, because these little things would come out when he, this whole thing with the radio happened. Then he's, oh yeah, well, my mother taught there. I was like, oh, really? And then he goes, yeah, that's actually her handwriting on the board. I go, that's phenomenal. That's a tremendous little bit of trivia that people would love to know. And it's unfortunate, she just passed away recently, but when he told me that, and then the same thing with the Zeppelin, it took a year to get it, and it was the beauty of the person wanting me to have it. Now, as far as like other things, it's like anything else. You want something to be difficult for a while, because if it's too easy, if I find something on screen and then I go on eBay and there it is and I click the button, there's no enjoyment in that. It's it's too fast. It's not fun. So there are things that I have chased down, like certain, this tiny soapbox is on the kitchen shelf behind the old man when he's filling up the water can, and like there was this much of it showing, and you could. And when I finally figured it out, I was like, great, I figured it out. And then it took me almost 6 months to find one, because where are you going to find a 90-year-old box of baking soda? So it's all those little searches and things where you meet people, or you take trips. I mean, a lot of these things that we picked up have trips associated with it. I try to make these things. My wife, God bless her, supports me a lot, but she's not as into it as I am, but she supports me. So I try to make it sort of a win-win for everybody. Let's go get this box of baking soda over in Detroit, 15-hour ride, and I'll take you to go see, the waterfalls over here, or take you on a ferry ride. And it's great. And it's actually really been great for our marriage, because we do all these things together. So every piece is important and just as, special as any other piece, because there's always, I don't just find it, buy it. And the key thing for me, which is why I write too much, is that I want to share this. So when I find this, I don't hide it and say, well, I got this, and now, there's a couple other major collectors, Jim Curry, Alan Hensch, a guy that you need to interview. He's got the best collection ever. His name's Chris Dearman. We've become really good friends. We all just have this passion to find this stuff, and when we do find it, we don't hoard it. We don't say, well, I'm not going to let anyone know. I'll find out what model it is, what number it is, which manufacturer. There's different variations. That Ferris wheel behind me has, several different variations to it, and I find the specific one that's in the movie, and then I go and I post it, and I say, if you're into this, here's what you want. I've done the research on it for you. So I love to share the information. That's why I write so much about everything that I do, because I'm not doing it just for me. I love having this stuff, but I want other people who enjoy the movie who might have this same kind of passion. There's all different levels of collecting. Some people just want to collect the new stuff. Some people just want to do the Legos. Some want to do this.
Sure.
Me, I happen to be an antique guy who wants the stuff that's in the movie, and I want to share that with other people who might want that same kind of thing.
Thank you for sharing that. That was actually one of my questions, is why this is so important to you. And as you're expressing this and you're telling me about other collectors that you've met along your path, it just brings a lot of I don't know, goosebumps, or really warm and fuzzy, loving feelings, because when you guys have collected so many small pieces from this movie. I mean, what most people don't realize is what you just held in front of you, a 90-year-old box of baking soda. 90 years. Like, my mom is 92. That box has been through so much history. And to be able to preserve that and be able to share that with others 90 years from now it's going to be 180 years old, right? So, for me, it's like it gives us the essence of a time period. And beholding that and respecting that and loving that and sharing in it in a community of collectors, that's why people collect paintings from hundreds of thousands of years ago, is because it has this history and it has this essence about it that can speak that history. So, I again, man, I got to give you so much love and respect for doing what you do, because it's rare. What you are doing, I would call it being a rare breed, out of a couple of you guys who are serious collectors, right? Because again, I would love to be able to do something with you guys in the future. And I, as you're talking, I'm having all these wheels going on about what I can do to preserve your history and but also make it known to all the Christmas Story fans that you are the historian. You are the one that took the time and the effort and invested into this for not only your own personal pleasure, right, but for others, because that sharing it's a quality that we need more of in people nowadays, and I'm sure you can agree with that, right? So, on your journey, I know that you've probably had a lot of really good experiences and maybe even some crazy ones, right? So tell me about, I don't know, the craziest experience you had trying to get a hold of one of these collectibles.
So what happened as a natural progression, when you start to collect the toys and stuff, it starts to wind down. So then it occurred to me to start, you do the autograph thing, you do the meeting and the photographs. And I went to New Jersey, met you guys, and I went to Cleveland, met 11 out of the 12 of you. And it was interesting. At Cleveland, you had Monica Harvey and Jill Young. Now, they are in the movie, but they're not the typical, like ones that people would normally go to. And I found that fascinating. And I also found it fascinating that people were lining up for them. And it occurred to me at that point, after getting their autograph and hearing their stories, I was like, I bet you there are dozens of people that are in this movie and have some kind of story. And that's when, and I actually left while waiting online for someone was behind me, a guy I had talked to on the site, on the family site, who had mentioned briefly that he was in the background of the movie. And I said, oh, that's cool. And at the Cleveland, I met him, and we talked for a little bit, and he was going online for something. And then after he left, about a half hour goes by, and my wife goes, you got his autograph, right? And I said, oh, my God, I didn't. Oh, so I call this guy, and he's already left. He's left the convention center. He's halfway home. He's already 45 minutes away. And I said, I am so sorry. I said, it realized to me how important all these extras are and these stories they have. And what he did was, we were leaving the next day from Cleveland to go back to New Jersey. He drove all the way back to sign my photo that I had. And from then on, it was game on with the extras. And that's the next chapter now is that I'm into. And one of the craziest extras stories is in the very opening of the movie, very short scene, when the four kids are at the window of Higbee's, they brush past this couple that's in a military uniform. There's a man and a woman. Very iconic, like it stands out because they're in uniform. And I reached out, and unbelievably, someone clued me into who the woman was. and I was able to contact her, and I said, her name's Mia, and I said, Mia, is that? She goes, yeah. And she goes, and that was my boyfriend Tom. And I said, is there any story why did they tell you to dress up like that? And she goes, they didn't. She goes, there was an open call. She goes, and Tom, her boyfriend, was a military uniform collector, historic. He goes, let's put these on. And so she goes, I don't know why. It's for a Christmas Story movie. We're supposed to just be. He goes, let's put these on. They get down there. Casting's closed. They don't want any more people. But someone walked over who kind of knew them and said, whoa, look at those uniforms. And they're period correct. Mia knew how to do makeup and hair. She did her hair in 40 style. So they pulled them in special and said, we got to have you in this movie. And they ended up spending, just like many of the other extras, like 12-hour nights from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. out in the cold of Cleveland. Yeah. She didn't have any proper stockings on, and it ended up that they ended up getting married after that for a short time. They did break up, but they're best of friends. And Cindy and I drove all the way out there to meet them, and they had the uniforms still, and I got to see them. And I was like, do you understand how mild your role is, but how iconic it is? Because you can mention to a lot of people, and they do remember the military couple in there. And that was their idea to do that. And just by doing that idea, that got them onto the movie, and that got them a little bit of screen time. And she remembers going to watch the first time the movie came out, and she saw herself, and she was so excited that her and Tom stayed and watched the second showing. And they were trying to kick him out of the theater, and she goes, no, you don't understand. I'm in this movie. And all these extras that I've met, and I've met dozens at this point, they're all, how we all have a story. We all have the same 5 stories that we always willing to tell. This is always one of their stories. How I became, whether they're just in the background. Most of these people I'm talking about have not spoken one word on camera, but they all have interesting stories, and how they got involved and what it meant to them. And some of the stories are even more phenomenal. I found a picture online of a behind the scenes thing, and I posted it. And a little bit later, a woman named Celeste Gotch writes me, and she goes, "That's that picture is of my Uncle Kenny." And she goes, I said, "Oh, he worked on it." She goes, "Yeah, he was first assistant director." And I said, "Oh my goodness!" And she goes, "Well, actually, my dad was the assistant producer." I said, "Really?" And she goes, "Yeah, and me and my mom and my brother are in the movie as extras." I said, "Oh my gosh." So I started these great stories, and the picture that I posted of her uncle, she saw it the night after he had passed away, and she said, that photo coming up was a sign to us that he was still with us, and we're still going to celebrate him, because we had never seen that particular photo before. I didn't know who he was. I was just putting up as a behind-the-scenes thing. And we both felt like that bond, like, wow, this was meant to be, that this picture showed up on this time, the night after he passed, and you're telling me now that your dad worked on the film, your uncle worked on the film, you were in it. This is the family. The Gotch family is the ones who came up with the idea that Bob Clark took for the bowling restaurant. Her dad, when he was young, was driving with his father across Florida, and the family was so hungry they were looking for a place, and they stopped somewhere that was a bowling alley with the W blown out, and they thought, or with the thing blown out, and they literally thought it was a Chinese restaurant, and they were friends with Bob Clark, and they mentioned it to him, and he says, I have to put that in the movie. So here's a woman that I meet just from a random picture that I come to find out that her dad, her uncle are working crew, as first assistant director and assistant producer, and that she, her mom, and her brother are in it, and that they're responsible for the whole bowling, funny Chinese theater thing, restaurant thing. And you can't make that up. When you stumble on stuff like that, it blows your mind. And sometimes people don't realize how interesting that would be to our fans. So then I go and I'll write it up and I'll put it out there. So it's all been positive, very positive.
That's amazing how, an idea which can manifest into something that literally decades later becomes a tradition in somebody's life. That's the power of this movie, right? That's an amazing thing. So outside of meeting so many background performers, since we don't like to call them extras anymore. We like to call them,
Yes, I've heard that.
and
Yes.
that's just because this movie has gotten to the point where everybody that was involved in the creativity and the ideas and the production, even like Ruben Fried with his leg lamp, like all those ideas with Malware, right? Malavar Martin, right? So their relationship,
Martin.
all of these little nuances that made this thing come together, in our opinion, are the essence why we get to experience what we experience. So, bringing them to light and talking about them and maybe even meeting them and doing interviews with them is helping solidify the legacy of A Christmas Story and everybody's experience of it. So, and you're a big part of that, man. Whether you believe it or not, you are a big part of that because you're uniting people together. And outside of
Yeah.
the background performers, I'm sure you probably met some people that were on the crew too. So do you have any experiences with people that were part of the crew?
Yeah, very recently. So if anyone's been following my recent post, Cindy and I did what was our ultimate trip. Was we had done when we were in Cleveland, we did all the Cleveland sites. But a lot of people don't realize just how much of the movie is shot in Canada. So what Cindy and I decided to do was do a combination trip of not only meeting some of the background performers, I learned that term, and but to visit the filming locations that were all in Canada, very similar to what Tyler and Jordy did on their road trip for Ralphie. And what I did was I actually contacted Tyler and said, we're going to be out there. I know you have this store out in Canada. Can I come by and say hello? He said, yeah, we could do that. And then a couple days later, he goes, maybe we could do a little more. And he actually, my initial meeting with everybody was set up by Monica Harvey, who you know very
Yep, yep.
well. Monica set up a meeting. She set up the whole visit to the fire department to see the fire engine. And it was Monica, Jill Young, Leanne Semple. She's one of the youngest students that's in the class. And Ann Dean, who, again, another fascinating story. Monica, Jill, and Leanne all went to Victoria School.
Yep.
So they were extras that actually went to that school. Ann Dean, who was supposed to be in the movie and who was costumed and actually filmed but just didn't make the cut, she was their teacher at one point. So now I'm in Canada with 3 background performers who went to the school and their actual teacher, who is phenomenal. Ann Dean's terrific because she documented so many behind-the-scenes things that I call her the sort of unofficial historian of A Christmas Story Canada, because she documented as a teacher, like she had this mindset to write, this is what we did on this day from these hours to these hours. She had all the background photos of the kids getting their 1940s haircut. And she came along with us. And at one point we all went to the school, which is no longer school. It's a women's shelter. And I had this wonderful picture of them standing on the steps, the 3 students and the teacher. And Tyler, who said to me, can I join you on that day? He was with us for that day. And then he ended up setting up 2 meetings, one with Martin and one with, what do you call it? So it was Tracy Budd, who was the prop master. So we got those interviews now too with someone who actually made and worked on the props. And then we got to talk to Martin, who now runs a winery. He runs a beautiful winery, which we went and visited.
Awesome.
And Martin was telling his story again about his involvement with the lamp and some of the things on the set. Mm-hmm. So now you have all these background performers. You have this guy and his Jordy and Tyler, who did this wonderful. It's the perfect little film of them finding all those sites. And then what Cindy and I, our intention was to redo that trip. So they had visited those sites 25 years after the movie. And I was like, well, it's been another 15, 16 years or 40 something years after the movie. Let's see if we can go. And we found all the sites, and I'm happy to report that a lot of them are still identifiable. It's the magic of the movies that you don't realize. Like, I was expecting this trip to be a lot of small town stuff. Toronto is huge. Yes. It is gigantic. Yes. And the things where you think that, when Randy gets his mom, when Ralphie's beating up Scott, You think she's just coming down the street from the house to the alley, and in reality, these things are miles and miles and miles away in big industrial areas, and it's just funny to see how the movie makes it look like this 1940s hometown feel, when in reality, you guys are in a lot of different places. I mean, I heard that the shed that you climb out of was actually just built on the road. It was not a real garage. Do you recall that? I'd like to confirm that if you can recall that.
Which one?
The shed, when you climb out of the
Yeah, no,
shed, the
built.
roof of the shed for the
That was
first,
built.
that was
Yeah,
built,
yeah.
right?
So, if what you probably don't remember then is when I a couple of years ago I did a free plus shipping offer, right? So you basically I gave you some free autographs and all you had to do was pay for shipping. On those little 4x6 pictures that I sent out, there was one picture of me inside of that little, what was supposed to be a trash can, but it was like a little shack. Right, and my
Yes.
mom took that picture because I was standing on this rickety little wooden, you know, those rickety wooden ladders that you get for the least expensive ones you can find. It was this rickety wooden ladder that was like somebody had, like two people had to hold it while I was standing on there. And my mom just snapped a picture of me looking down, you know what I mean, at my mom when I was supposed to be popping up out of the trash can. So that was built, and I think they built that, God, I don't know, in like 4 hours. You know what I mean? They just slapped those things up and paint them real quick, and because you know the movie magic, you don't necessarily see all those minor details of it not being real. It looks completely real. If you look at it in the movie, it's kind of awkward. There's a dead end, right? Like all the kids are
Yes.
walking towards a dead end, and that dead end is by track and where I
Yes.
pop out. You know what I mean? So why was that happening? Nobody questioned that before, right? But anyways, that was
Right.
built there.
Yeah, that I know exactly where it was because we were there, and that's it's fun, like you said, it's fun that we can sit here 40 something years later and still find some fun in it. Like that, there's a post that went really pretty well on your site with when we were sitting with Tracy and his wife Barbara. You know, he was the property master. She just randomly at some point just goes, "Yeah, I made the red cabbage," and my wife and Tyler and myself, and we
Wait,
go, "Could you repeat that?" She goes, "I made the red cabbage." And and my wife goes, "Do you have that recipe?" And she goes, "Sure, I do." And she wrote it down for us and she signed it. And I was like, she goes, "Would anyone be interested in knowing that?" And I said, "People are going to go ballistic that we met the person who made the red cabbage."
so another piece of experience that you had no idea you were going to run into, you know what I mean, sitting at that table asking those questions. Or she just randomly brought that up. Was anything else? Did she do anything else besides be the producer of the of the cabbage? I mean, it's iconic.
Well, of course, the question, which I guess I must have missed because I was in so much shock about the red cabbage, is everyone was writing on your site was, well, who made the meatloaf? I was like,
Of course, right? Well,
right. It just comes to. So I actually had to call Tyler and say, "Tyler, could you please check?" And he goes, "No." He goes, "Barb and Tracy. Any meal that you see on that screen was they were property masters. Tracy was the property master, and his wife was helping him out. Any meal you seen was done by one of those two. The breakfast that the dad eats in the morning, Tracy made those eggs and stuff, and the meatloaf and the cabbage." But he said that he recalls Barbara saying that she does not no longer has the recipe for the meatloaf. So I'm sorry to disappoint any fans out there, but the red cabbage is delicious because my wife came home and made it, and
that's awesome.
and you know that's funny, that scene where everyone knows that cut scene from the toilet to the. I totally missed that and only learned that 2 days ago, 3 days ago when I started seeing. And now the question is, was that intentional? So I'm actually trying to find the editor to see if he's still around to see if was that an intentional thing or was that just beautiful happenstance?
Oh,
Because everyone seemed to catch that, and I did not catch
you
that.
did okay. So, I think that if I remember correctly, when we were at the premiere for watching the movie when I was 10 years old, 10 and a half years old, that was one of the most iconic shifts because it was, I think it was very intentional because there was that factor of like seeing a kid going poop, right? And all of a sudden, right to the food that they're eating, right? So I think that transition was very intentional and you need to go back and watch that because now you'll have a very different experience that, you sat with the woman that actually made that soup, right? And of course, that's one scene that you missed, which,
Right.
that again, that's another very important scene in the movie that teaches us lessons about that timepiece and that time period. You know what I mean? Even having that um, making parts of the movie funny, right? Because how many times do we get to laugh in that movie? And how many times does it resonate to have an emotional connection to that movie, right? So there's so many roller coasters when it comes to, the emotional ties and experiences that movie brings to us. I'm surprised it actually took this long to actually get together and have these conversations, because talking about this and talking about it and talking about it and just getting out, I know for you is not only exciting, but it brings back a lot of really good memories. And, for me to hear you say that, it also brings back a lot of good memories for me as well. And I think that is important for both of us, because it reminds us why we do what we do. You know what I mean? And so talking about, Dr. Q and his experience with Gene Shepard and the experience that I had with his podcast was incredible. Like, I read the manuscript and I was blown away, and then he sent me the book, and then I'm kind of just like in awe that there was so much intention behind what Gene Shepard does and writes, and the messaging and his experience and how he expresses these different scenes. And now when I go back and I listen to his narration in the movie, it has a whole different meaning for me now. And so I hear that you're also planning to co-author a book. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, there's Chris Dearman, who's the other major collector and become a good friend of mine. He and I are looking to do a book on the collectibles of A Christmas Story, the things that are in the movie, with not only showing, what the item is, when it was made, but also a little history on who made it. A lot of the major toy manufacturers at that time were
Yeah.
Marx, Wolverine, and it's crazy. Some of these toys are. I was never really a toy collector until I started collecting Christmas Story stuff, and I can't believe that these are really toys that survive this amount of time, because they're just stamped tin, and they're very fragile, and they're wonderful to play with. And I have a newfound love for toys. So I think a lot of people would like to know what the things are in the movies, not just the toys and Higbees, but the stuff that's in the family's home. What silverware are they using? What plates are they using? What salt and pepper shaker is that? And Chris and I, and like I said, some of the other collectors like Alan and Jim, we are pursuing all those answers for our own collections, and then putting that information out there for people um, who may want to follow this same crazy path. And everyone collects something, whether you know it or not. And for me, it's the antiques, and I think the antiques of A Christmas Story are just extra special, because when I watch the movie and I see, something in the background, I go, oh yeah, I have that over here, or maybe I don't have it, and maybe I should go find that. So yeah, we're hoping to do a book on the collectibles of A Christmas Story.
That's amazing, man. I think that's very needed, to be honest with you. And I support you 100%. If there's anything that I can do to help, I'm there for you, man. And I'm sure Dr. Q did the same thing, right? Because here's the other thing that I've learned, John, is that your passion of what you've been doing for the movie is your journey about this movie. Every single person that I've talked to on these podcasts, from Erwin Zwilling, who was, a producer of Christmas Story Christmas, who was Gene Shepard's, accountant, to Monica, to Scotty, to fans, to, all, to Dr. Q. We all have the same passion, love, and commitment, because we know and understand how important this movie is and how it resonates what childhood used to be like. And that's something that we need to preserve. Again, you and I both know that ever since the advancement of technology, children's livelihood and lifestyles are very different than when they were like with no cell phones available. and to not be able to share that information with the new generations to come, it's going to be lost. And so for our, love and passion for this movie, having this much information in this short time, that I think we could probably do a couple, like a docuseries with everything that you're doing. And as a matter of fact, I'd like to do that with you, because you have so many experiences with this, to be able to talk about it to the fans and talk about your experiences. People want to hear it, just like you think in your mind, like, I wonder if people are going to want that book. I'm going to tell you right now, that book is going to be high demand. And remember that there are 55 plus million fans for A Christmas Story, so you're not going to run shortage of people that have an interest. That's for sure. So,
and it's generational. It's hitting a new generation right now. It's going to go on. It's beyond a movie anymore. It's a generational connection. It's something that people are going to pass on with their kids and their grandkids, and it's wonderful. And you should be very proud that you're part of it. And I do want to give you guys all the actors and background performers, kudos, because when I go to these shows, I see what you're up against sometimes. It's the same quotes, it's the same things. And I've never once seen any of you guys say, get mad or say, I really don't want to hear that anymore. Or you play along, because you know that it happens on the site too. Someone will post something and then you'll get that meanie curmudgeon guy who goes, we answered this 4 weeks ago, but that doesn't matter. This person coming on might not have been on 4 weeks ago. Maybe they just come on and they don't know all the things and they don't have the time to go back, for 4 years of postings. So I never mind when a newbie asks this question that's been asked 100 times, because to me, that's an opportunity to take that person and say, come on in, look at all the great things that are ahead for you. You're going to learn a lot now. And, that's the attitude you have to have. And you guys are great with that. I've never seen any of you ever get upset with the multiple quotes that come back to you or the things people ask you to do. And even if there's things you don't want to do, you're polite about it. You say, I don't really do that, but you guys are great. You guys are really good. And what you put together here is a really good place. It's going to be something that's going to be remembered for a long time. When I came on, I think you had 25,000, and I think last time I looked, you're up to 83. Am I correct on that?
84 now. Yep. So what I want to do now is do this game segment, right? So we want to switch gears, kind of have a little laughs, maybe some funs, and so rather than doing a game, for this episode, we wanted to ask you to expand a little bit more on the recent trip that you had to Canada. So I do have a few rapid fire questions for you, just to give our audience, which, our audience sometimes may not see this video. So if you guys are listening to this on, Apple Podcast or, Spotify or something like that, you can always go to our YouTube channel and watch the actual video of our podcasts. And if any of you out there have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, you want to do that, because then you'll get notifications when we post. And we have been doing an episode every single week, and we're trying to stay on top of that. To keep it interesting and to keep, people abreast about really cool things inside of A Christmas Story. So just to give our audience a bit of a peek behind the curtain into what your experience has been like. So let's go ahead and jump into this. So what was the most beautiful place that you have visited on your trips?
The most beautiful place, when we went to see Mia and Tom, who were the army couple in the thing, there was a beautiful, out of the way little waterfall area that was just absolutely gorgeous. Because when we're out places, I just hit up, what can you see out here? And Cindy and I walked down this little path, and it just opened up to this glorious waterfall. And it was a perfect day out, and the right amount of sun, right amount of wind. That was one. Now, are you referring to Canada or any trip? I'm sorry. Does this have to be Canada only? Okay, so that was one of the nicest things.
Amazing. Now, what was the best meal on your trip, and where did you actually eat it?
So I am the worst person with food. I am not a foodie. I am. When we were all together, Tyler and all the background performers, we went to this wonderful Greek restaurant where everyone enjoyed these wonderful things, and I had to go to the back and say, it would be okay if you made me a hamburger. So and which they agreed to, because I am just not a food person. But one of the fun things we did was was it called poutine for the first time, which is a Canadian thing, and as soon as I saw it, I said, "This is disco fries," because it was potatoes with gravy and cheese on it, and it's a big thing out in Canada, and it was actually quite delicious.
Right on. Now, we've talked about a lot of very interesting people that you have come across, but I'm sure there may be one or two. But let's talk about your top one, the most interesting person that you met while you were visiting all of the shooting locations.
All the locations. You know what was an interesting interview? Really dichotic. It was really interesting. It was with Dave Sabota, the Goggles
Yes.
boy. He's sort of taken himself out of the whole loop of the
Mm-hmm.
thing. So I wrote him randomly. We go to interview him in Detroit, which was a very long trip for us, and we're sitting there and he's telling us how much he really doesn't want to be involved anymore, that it was something he did and he appreciates it. And then the whole time I'm sitting there, and finally at the end I said to him, why are we sitting here then? Like, why did you agree to meet with me? And it was the same thing again. He goes, I don't know. It's something about you. He goes, you didn't seem crazy. And he goes, and your passion seemed to be the kind of thing that he goes, I didn't mind meeting with you. So we met with him and I got an autograph from him. And it was like the weirdest kind of thing because he doesn't really, I think, who said something really, I think it was Ian when you guys were in that beautiful convention center in Cleveland, whatever where Al Roker interviewed you guys.
That auditorium.
I think it was Ian who said something very interesting. He goes, I enjoyed I'm paraphrasing, I enjoyed the whole experience of A Christmas Story, but I don't want to be defined by it. And I could respect that. And there are people who, like yourself and others who go out and they really promote it. And then there's others who kind of just say, I did it and, it was great, but I'm moving on. And that interview was very interesting because we rode a long way out there. And I was expecting that he was going to be like so into it. And it was like just sitting and talking with an old friend. So it was, I know that's not an exciting story, but I just found it almost like hit me like a 2x4, because I actually had to say to him, and then I felt bad because I had photos and I was like, well, I'm not going to ask you to sign anything. He goes, no, I'll sign this for you. He goes, I just don't want to do this anymore. And I was like, okay. So it was kind of weird. It was great though. It's a story.
It is a story. It is a story. There's a story behind that story as well. You know what I mean? And thank you for sharing that, because Dave is not the only person, and I am super grateful that he had participated for what he's already done, and he is an amazing human being with a family, you know what I mean, and a career, and I get that, I understand that, and I respect their wishes, even when and Ian says I don't want to be defined by this. For me, I have a different perspective. And that's my personal experience, and that personal experience is because I resonate with what this has done for people in their life. This movie has saved lives. This movie has created, relationships with family that, if it wasn't for this movie, would have never existed. This movie has, in my experience, has created something that is unlike anything else that I think I can ever do in my life. Just because I'm a cast member and you happen to be a super fan that's a collector, we're one and the same. And I think that one and the same goal is that now we have a deeper connection because of the movie. And I know it's probably, it was very surreal that you got to meet the cast and like being in the building with all of these fans and seeing us and meeting us and getting autographs was like, yes, this is amazing. This has been in my life. And like, I'm sharing this with my wife that, so many years ago we saw this together. And so, those special emotions that go on in your body and in your mind, I recognize that. And I know that happens. And I know that happens with every single human being that is present with us or thinks about the movie or is watching the movie, or when they see A Christmas Story merch, they're like, automatically they have those memories and they buy something because it's important to them. You know what I mean? So regardless if other cast members feel that way, my intention and my goal is to support everybody that wants to keep this thing alive, right? So, for those who don't know, Tim Horton is a chain, like a donut shop in Canada, right? It's one of the famous donut shops, and it's kind of a very big deal for Canadians. It's like, Duncan, if Duncan was named after the hockey player, right? Now, did you stop at any Tim Hortons at all while you were there? Are you a donut person at all?
You couldn't throw a stone without hitting a Tim Hortons out there, and yet we managed to avoid every single one of them.
Okay, all right, that's awesome. Well, I just had to ask because you're right.
I'm not a Dunkin' Donuts person either. So when we saw it, my wife goes, "Oh, it's just like Dunkin' Donuts." I said, "Well, I guess there's nothing for me here then." So I should have done it though because you're supposed to, and I didn't. So now I got to go back.
Well, dang. Oh, darn it. All right. Well, through your experiences and through your journeys, if there is a fan out there who wants to follow in your footsteps, because I got to tell you now, man, you may have just made your own title as a documentarian, literally, of A Christmas Story. So if somebody wants to follow in your steps, what are the must see places that they have to make it to?
I think the Canada trip probably outdoes the Cleveland one, although Cleveland was great. I think that when you go to the bridge where the tire happened, and I just found out that bridge is on a preservation list and it's being restored, so that's going to be here for another 100 years. I think going to see the exterior of the school. I think the Canada trip. So what I plan to do is I plan to put on your site a very detailed map with stop locations, what's the best time to go, what's the best place to park, and how to do it, because I just did not understand how huge Toronto was. And some of the sites were very difficult to get to. And I think if I put something out there for someone that makes it easier for them, that would be a good thing to do. So I'm going to put together a map and an itinerary kind of thing and let you know where these places are, the best times to go to them, the best places to park to go see it. And I think that would be helpful to a lot of people who want to make this journey, because it does make it a little more personal. Every time I go to a site location for this movie or other movies that I like, I always tend to put on that scene after I come back home, and it gives you a whole different. I mean, you look at things in a whole different. You know that because you filmed there. I didn't know that until just now. What that alley was like, what you had to do, where you had to be, and it changes it, and it actually refreshes and makes it more exciting again. So
that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. So, John Demmer, here you are on Talking a Christmas Story with the cast. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your dedication and your love to this movie. Thanks to your father for taking you and your wife to go see that movie. Is he still with us, or is he passed?
No, I lost him a while back.
Okay, well, God rest his soul. And again, he's probably listening. He's probably watching you right now. So thank you for bringing us together. We appreciate that very, very, very much. So again, thank you, John Demmer. We appreciate you, and we love to see your posts. Keep posting. Don't let anybody stop you or sway you from doing your thing. All right, brother? Well, folks, there you have it. Another major award edition, Talking a Christmas Story with the cast. A heartfelt thank you goes out to John Demmer for inviting us into his world of wonders, where every piece of memorabilia tells a story of its own. It's inspiring to see how A Christmas Story, with its timeless charm, continues to spark such joy and devotion, and even more heartwarming to see how this story is being captured and shared with fans for years to come. Whether you're an ardent collector like John or simply a fan who cherishes watching the movie, this film has a unique way of knitting us all together in a cozy tapestry of holiday cheer. So as we part ways today, remember to keep the spirit of A Christmas Story alive in your hearts, not just during the holidays, but all year round. We are so grateful to our friends and fans that want to enjoy all of the great things the movie has to offer and beyond. And we here at the A Christmas Story family have created a way for you to do just that. The A Christmas Story family has come together to create something truly unique just for you. The A Christmas Story Immersion experience. Now, just imagine this. You're not just watching your favorite scenes from the A Christmas Story sitting on your couch. You're living it. You're interacting with the cast, weaving those beloved moments into your family's everyday life. This is the magic that we bring to you at A Christmas Story family. What makes this even more extraordinary is we're giving you a specially crafted gift box that were designed for the distinguished guests at the 40th anniversary VIP dinner event in the birthplace of A Christmas Story, Hammond, Indiana. These weren't just any boxes. They were designed to look just like the iconic leg lamp crate and filled with major awards that were valued at over $2,500. These boxes were crafted as a tribute to the film's legacy and given to our special guests. We only made 28 of these rare boxes, making them incredibly valuable and exclusive. But that's just the beginning, because now, for the very first time ever, we are giving you the chance to get one of these exclusive boxes to enhance the new magical immersion experience. And the best part is that the box is free. And to make it even more magical and historic, for the first time ever in the 40th history of the movie, we're recreating the original leg lamp design as seen in the movie, an exact replica, which has never been done before. Our partner, Reuben Freed, the original creator of the leg lamp, and Bob Clark's close friend, who still has the original sketches of the leg lamp made for the movie, is bringing the original leg lamp and its original specs and design back to life. And it also comes in that box for free. The cast and I have been working on this secret for months, and now it's time for you to discover its beauty. We invite you to check it out. Give us your honest feedback and join us on this incredible journey. Trust me, you do not want to miss out. So go to www.achristmasstoryfamily.com/free box to find out more. Join us and become part of our extended family. Your exclusive journey awaits. And until next time, we love you.
Oh my God, I shot my eye out. You'll shoot your eye out.